and our guest this morning is Gordon MacIntyre-Kemp of Business for Scotland. Morning, Gordon.
Good morning. Great to be here. Thank you very much. And it's Business for Scotland and now Believe in Scotland, which is the new organisation as well.
Yes, indeed. And that's the main reason why we thought let's try and get Gordon on this week. Just before we get that far, give people a little bit of background. So you, of course, are very well known in the Yes movement in Scotland, but you're also well known more broadly than that, business community in Scotland. I know you've been down to Westminster a few times, given them the benefit of your expertise and views about how business is going in Scotland. So you set up Business for Scotland.
Yep.
I was having a wee look at the website yesterday, and I noticed that on the bits that go our aims and what we do, what you're talking about is diversifying Scottish economy, strengthening it, expanding it, basically getting it up to the level of other small northern European nations, because we're definitely lagging in that respect. And I was sort of struck that nowhere on those 2 pages do you mention independence for Scotland. But of course, those other small nations are all independent, and sooner or later, if you're trying to strengthen the economy, you're going to bump into the limits of not being independent, aren't you?
Oh, we already have many years ago, I think.
Yeah. So there's Business for Scotland. Out of that, a wee while back now, came Scotland a Brief, which is a fantastic set of resources.
Thank you.
I'm involved up in the Pensioners for Indie Stall up in Milngavie. Well, not just now, but I was. And it's great, you can hand out those postcards or the A4 sheet. People that don't want to stand and talk, or they don't want to talk about independence, but to be able to hand that out and say, you probably find this interesting, because so many Scots don't realise, they hear the Yes movement saying we're rich enough, but don't really understand just how rich we are as a country. So there's Business for Scotland, Scotland a Brief, and now Believe in Scotland. So do you want to tell us a bit about the new initiative, Believe in Scotland?
Believe in Scotland, yeah. Well, I think going back to what you were just saying there, Believe in Scotland isn't actually, it's a Business for Scotland initiative, but it's also the very first of 5 campaigns that we have planned as part of the Believe in Scotland initiative. I'm not going to go into details of what the other campaigns are, because that would be going public with too much information. But the first part of the campaign was to convince people that Scotland could afford to be independent. In fact, that we can't afford not to be independent, because of the point you made there, which I think is a very good one. And we are bumping up against the limits of devolution in terms of running our economy. We are held back by having a one-size-fits-all economic strategy from London. And I think that once we are independent, that what we also have to do is not have a one-size-fits-all strategy from Edinburgh, because, why shouldn't we have local decision-making as close as possible to the problems that need to be fixed throughout our entire nation? So I'm a big fan of that. But Business for Scotland started off as, around about 2011, I decided to start something called Business for Independence, because I knew we were going to get a referendum. And Jim Maver said, no, don't. There's something already called Business for Scotland, and we've been talking and thinking you should be the person that kind of takes that over. But it wasn't really functioning at that time, so it was really using an old name, but also a relaunch, but also a fresh new concept as well. And those goals on the website that you just mentioned were crowdsourced from our membership. And it's all about shared prosperity. It's about the common good. It's about paying a real living wage. It's about an environmentally sustainable approach to building our economy. And when we crowdsourced that from the first 250 members, we were struck by how different we were to any other business group like the CBI, etc. We definitely were not a right-wing business group, and that was really why we've been so successful, because we're part of the next economy, not the old economy.
Yeah.
And those goals are very similar to what a couple of years later the Scottish Government set out as its goals, almost word for word. So you get some sort of feeling as to where we are. We're kind of ahead of the curve in that respect. But in terms of Believe in Scotland, Business for Scotland made the business and economic case for independence. And it was so important last time round that we stood up against the CBI because, people didn't believe back then. I think 33% of people thought that Scotland could afford to be independent. So that was less people than were 5 or 6 less people, percent less than were willing to vote for independence. Now, the most recent poll is 55% of Scottish voters think that independence would be good for the Scottish economy. It's a big turnaround, and it's a huge change from IndyRef 1. And 70% of Scottish people would trust the Scottish government over the economy, and only about 30% obviously would trust the UK government or the Westminster government to run Scotland's economy. So that argument has completely flipped, and that has been our goal since the very beginning, to flip that argument. So it's not job done, but we are very pleased with how it's going. And you'll have noticed this morning there was a poll published in the National that 96% of the UK's most senior business leaders now believe Scotland will become independent, which is radically higher than the population of Scotland as a whole. And 95% of them said it wouldn't be a problem for their business, that they would just adjust. So everything's changed. I'm not saying that means we've got more time to do stuff, but we thought, well, okay, we've been leading the business and economic argument. Nobody seems to be out there campaigning and talking to the undecided on all the other issues. So Believe in Scotland is the campaign, a separate campaign to talk to the undecided voters, not just business people. And it's not focused on economics, it's actually focused on the values of the nation.
Yeah, I mean that turnaround, that poll. I didn't have time to read the article this morning, but I saw the headline about the business response to it. I mean, that's phenomenal, isn't it? I mean, hopefully that's going to pull the rug out from the usual, bunch of businesses. Well, actually, I was chuckling because I sort of thought it sort of sounds like the only businesses that will be saying, "Oh no, can't do that. We'll have to move south," will be the ones that are apparently based in Scotland, who are still against independence, whereas the rest of the UK will be saying, "Yeah, fine, just get on with it then."
Yeah, I mean, there are business people on both sides of the argument who are completely and utterly loyal to the SNP, to the Tories, to Labour. Very few to the Liberal Democrats, it doesn't seem, but those are where the business votes lie, and those people are going to be biased, and they're going to say things that are completely biased towards their viewpoint and their party. Yeah. But if you actually poll business owners, entrepreneurs, in the last referendum, about 60% yes. Yeah. Because entrepreneurs are risk takers, and they're they put their house in them, up to fund the start-up of their business. They see the opportunities and they go for the opportunities. So actually, they were amongst the first people to see the opportunity and be willing to go for it. But now more and more people realise there actually isn't that much of a risk. You don't have to put your house on the line. All you have to do is vote for a better Scotland and it'll arrive. So now more and more people are believing in Scotland, are believing in Scotland's economy, and it fundamentally changes the way we're going to have to campaign in the next referendum, which is why Believe in Scotland is, as I say, focused on values, focused on storytelling.
Yeah. So you're saying it would change the way we campaign. Will it change, before we move on to Believe in Scotland itself, but will it change the way you campaign to the business in Scotland?
Yes, it does, because that's a very good point. We spent the last campaign answering questions. How many civil servants would there be, and how much would it cost, and how many buildings would you have to build, and how would you set up the DVLA, or would you leave it there, and all. So we're on the back foot on everything, answering questions, because people were unsure and didn't know. Now people have had enough time to think about it, and they kind of realise that actually Brexit changes the economic risk. So now the argument is partly Brexit makes staying with the UK riskier than independence. People are beginning to accept that. People in business are accepting that. But we've also got to tell a story about business. And the story we want to tell about business is not the neoclassical economic story, but a version in Scotland. We want to talk about well-being economics. And because if you read their goals, you'll realize that those goals are based on the well-being of the nation. So before well-being was even a term, we were using the first ever champion in Scotland of well-being economics was Business of Scotland. I'll argue that completely. And so basically what we're looking to do is to create an economic vision, story about Scotland being a better place to do business, but not just to do business, but one that's an economic approach that is well being led. Because you can't have a strong economy without a strong society, and you can't have a strong society without a strong economy. And it's that completely circular understanding, not left and right on a pendulum, which is what we've got right now, but because you bring in the Labour Party, and the Labour Party invests in society. This is how it traditionally has worked. The Labour Party invests in society, and business doesn't necessarily get the attention it wants. So business starts to struggle, etc., and the cost of society goes up, and so you bring in the Conservatives, and the Conservatives invest in business, and you get a boost to the business, but then society starts to struggle, and then of course you get, because society's struggling, the economy goes down, and we just swinging backwards and forwards like idiots, from left to right, left to right. The only way to run the economy is to make sure that there is a balance between society and the economy, because the economy and society are one and the same. And so that is the economic theory that we're putting forward. And we've done a lot of research into this. We'll be publishing a report in the next couple of days, which I think is going to change everything in terms of the case for independence. So that's I hate game changer. I hate when people say game changer, but I think we might be close to having something. Valerie, sorry, I was interrupting you.
No, I just wanted to ask, when you were speaking there, the idea, it's really an interesting concept, the idea of this sort of seesawing back and forwards, and the Tories being the party of business and Labour not. And it reminds me when a while back we interviewed Roger Mullen, and he mentioned very much the idea of that people, one side are thrilled to this idea that everything private sector is good, public sector bad, whereas the other side have, the Labour, more left-wing side tend to be biased against the private sector. And his point was that that's a skewed thinking, in that, there is much that the private sector can do well, and there can be things that the public sector does badly. So I just wondered, do you, is that part of the philosophy of Business for Scotland, the idea of balancing the private and the public sector?
Well, first of all, as an economist, I can tell you there's absolutely no evidence that the private sector outperforms the public sector across the world's economies. It just doesn't happen. Many of the economies that you think are the most right-wing have massive amounts of government intervention in them. Singapore would be a case in point, where almost all the big companies have the government has a golden share in them. Our own train networks are run by a Dutch public company, have been run by a Dutch public company. Whether you think that's good or not, it's good in Holland, in the Netherlands, sorry. I think those are old-fashioned arguments. And I think it's really important not to get stuck into that, because right now we're looking at a situation where Brexit is a catastrophe. It's a disaster, and it's a designed disaster. COVID on top of that means that the right-wingers in London are going to introduce what's known as disaster capitalism response, which is that they are going to say, well, we've got the health scare, we've got the changes in to achieve the opportunities of Brexit. What we have to do is we have to make business leaner. We've got to get rid of some of the costs. So, for instance, this minimum wage idea is a bad idea, isn't it? No, it's not, because if you don't pay people a fair wage, they can't contribute to your economy. And if they can't buy your coffee, and they can't get their hair cut, and they can't buy your furniture from IKEA, your economy sinks. And so you've got to pay people the wage that floats the economy. Part of the rising tide is the wage of the workers. And so basically, we've got a situation where either we're looking for a sort of Nordic inspired to a certain extent, but a well-being economy, which, you could say New Zealand inspired as well, but actually it's coming from Scotland. I think we are one of the leading lights in the world in this. And I think, we can actually replace that old style thinking with something new, become an independent nation, because if you're going to change the system, but it's not a new system. It's not one of these ideas. So people, I'm not going to mention some of the ideas because I really get into some, I don't want to get into the argument about it, but some people come forward with a whole new economic strategy, and it's based on this one great idea. And it doesn't work, and it's untested, and no one's ever done it anywhere in the world. But a well-being approach blends multiple working approaches into one.
Yeah.
So it's actually, all of the ideas are proven. All of the ideas have been implemented somewhere else, but not as an overall approach. And as you look at it as an overall approach, you suddenly understand how they actually can work together. And we've polled 1,000 people in Scotland and 1,000 people in England on the values of well-being-led economics, which we had to design ourselves. First time anyone's ever done that anywhere in the world has actually tried to figure out if a whole nation is open to the well-being approach. And it shows a difference between Scotland and England, and it shows that we're ready for it. So I'm very excited about this.
Is that polling public yet?
It will be in the next couple of days.
Oh, that's good. Well, look out for that. I like getting into spreadsheets, Gordon. I'm just spreadsheet queen. But that whole we talked. There was mention of the well-being approach on the Believe in Scotland conference at the weekend, and I don't know about it in detail. I mean, I know as much as you've just said, but what it did for me was it just let me make a link between that whole approach and the question for the Yes movement of how to persuade people in my age group round to yes. And people in my age group, I mean, I'm sure I'm fairly typical. I voted
55, is it?
yeah, well, more than that. But I'm fairly typical. I voted Labour for decades. I'm not sure who else I voted for, but I'm a bit embarrassed about that now. But anyway, so there's a left-wing kind of, it's like the rest of Scotland, left-wing kind of approach to things. And I just thought, well, actually, the values that are there in the well-being are very much values that, I got brought up with. I mean, I got brought up with the idea of, look, of course, you do the best you can, and you go to university or whatever, get a decent job, and when you can, you put something back into society, because it's not just your mum and your dad that have helped you; it's also your school teachers and the society as a whole. So when you can, you put something back in, and I just kind of got a bit excited and thinking, well, I maybe need to start talking to the Pensioners for Indie groups about how we start bringing that discourse into when we start campaigning again for older people.
Absolutely, but it's not a socialist thing, because if you actually bring, right now with the wages we've got in-work poverty, we've got people working 2 jobs and still not able to pay their rent and feed their kids properly and buy their school uniforms, so they're not lazy. They are this right-wing idea that poor people are lazy. No, they're actually working 10 times harder than rich people. So, they're just not getting paid enough for a good day's work. And if you can make a profit without paying a high wage, then it's the business that's lazy, because the business isn't innovating. It's not bringing new products forward. It's not adding enough value to afford the wage. And if it adds enough value to afford the wage, then look out, world, because you can export whatever it is you're making, because you're better than other people. And so low wages just mean dying companies, milking profits rather than actually going out there and taking on the world. And that's actually a major problem in Scotland, is that we don't have enough companies that are actually innovating and creating breakout products.
Yeah, and I suppose as long as you're paying low wages, you're probably cheaper then. I mean, not in the long term, but cheaper then to not bother investing in new equipment and better ways of doing things.
Well, you're not making enough profit if you're not making a good enough product. It's the product that you invest in that gives you the extra profit, to allows you to invest more in the product, to invest more in the manufacturing, etc. But the thing I was going to say is about the well-being approaches. The key to the well-being approach is that we focus too much on GDP. We worry about the stock market. Who cares about the stock market? I mean, in the end, it sort of evens out. You might have a pension, etc. But the fact that the FTSE is down 25 points, I bet you I could survey 1,000 people and nobody could explain to me what that really means. Sure. Yet it gets reported on the news. But the thing is that we talk about GDP, but it's actually the well-being of the economy that drives GDP. So things like a sense of security, things like people having enough money not to worry about poverty and not to worry about their pensions, etc. People having a good environment to live in, those sort of things, and also health outcomes and happiness and a lack of depression. Those things should be economic measures, which in terms of policy terms have the same value to policymakers as GDP does, because your GDP increases if you get those things right, whereas the right wing thinks you can't afford those things.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can't actually make a good economy without those things, and that's the well-being approach. But the thing is, so the final thing I'll say on that is that it's not a left-wing thing, because if you've got 25% of your population who are working poor and not contributing to your economy, if you want to start a business, then we've just found you 25% more potential customers. It's huge for entrepreneurs to find that many more people able to afford to put an extension on their house, to change their kitchen, to buy a new car. So, so it works for everybody.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to say is that economically, we can tell a better story than Britain can, with our vision and our values and blending that into our society and our economy. And that's what Believe in Scotland is all about, is telling a better story, is saying to Scotland, you're better than this.
And storytelling was very much one of the key messages from the conference last weekend. So maybe we could move on to talking a little bit about that, because we were both there for most of the week. Well, I think I was there the whole weekend, actually. So it was really inspiring, I think was the word that I saw used most often by people. So tell us about where the inspiration, I was going to repeat myself here, where did the impetus come, Gordon, for having that conference, and how did it come to fruition?
So basically, we do this program called the Independence Ambassador Program, and it's a Believe in Scotland program. It started off as a Business for Scotland program, but we changed it and made it for everybody. And it basically teaches you how to win arguments. It teaches you how to convince people, not win arguments, but really avoid arguments and convince people to vote yes. And it gives you all the skills. It teaches you everything from body language, how to ask questions, those sort of things. And part of that program that we do, and it's mostly been available online as well for the last few months, but actually in a month or so, this month we will launch it again online with a whole lot of new content, including content from the conference, so everyone can do that while socially distancing. But part of that was this storytelling concept as part of what we already train, which is something you need to be able to say to people, this is my story of an independent Scotland, this is my vision, this is the values that I am projecting, because then people can buy into it. So instead of actually someone saying, how do we ever afford it? Then you do something called objection jiu-jitsu, where you go, well, how do you actually afford it if we Brexit? So you turn the weight of their own argument against them. And so if somebody says to you, why do you support independence? People sort of go, well, they try and give you 50 ideas. And it's kind of boring. But also they haven't listened, so they don't know which ones will work. So it's a bit of a sales pitch you've got to do. So basically, I say to people, practice your own story, practice your own set of values. 30-second statement, have a story, and then boil it down to a 30-second statement. So someone says to me, why do you believe in independence? And I would say, well, first of all, I think we can be a better nation as an independent nation than we are as part of the United Kingdom. I think we're being held back by Westminster's one-size-fits-all for our economy and also for our society. I think, secondly, we want to be a fairer nation. We want to be a greener nation. We want to be a happier nation. We want to be more Scandinavian in our outlook, but actually not Scandinavian Scottish. So I think, again, that we can be better than this. And finally, I think there's a democratic deficit. We're dragged out of Europe against our wishes. We get governments we don't vote for. See, it doesn't matter what colour the party that runs an independent Scotland is to me. What matters to me is that it's one that we've chosen, and I'll abide by that and I'll accept that. So, we'll be a better nation. We'll be greener, fairer nation with a better set of values and more democratically accountable. What's not to like? That's why I believe in independence. Why do you believe in the UK?
Yeah.
And so we teach people to have those conversations rather than someone says, how are you for independence? Well, we've got more oil than you'd believe, and there's a fact there's going to be a West Coast oil. You've just lost that person straight away. And if you go, well, I hate the Tories, all the undecided voters at some point have considered voting Tory, or do currently, or old Labour. So if you go, well, I can't stand Jeremy Corbyn and Sir Keir, whatever his name is rubbish, and I hate the Tories, then you've just lost as a vote. So you've got to just give that positive message. So really that storytelling was embedded into that. And we thought, well, let's actually make that a key part of the overall conference. And we got Kieran, who was the chief exec or director of the International Storytelling Centre, which is in Kentucky in America. And he lived in Glasgow for a while, and he recorded a fantastic keynote for us on that. And I think opened up everyone's ideas to being positive and actually sharing their stories.
Yeah.
So, that's what we're doing. We're sharing a better story of Scotland, not on the back foot answering questions about
and
the
I think the benefit, one of the advantages of that, it didn't strike me at the time, but afterwards it did, was actually if I'm trying to do that, work out my own 30 seconds worth, I've got to think through again, sort of drop down to the normal things I say, drop down to a kind of deeper set of things that I believe in or want to change. Now, that's actually a wee bit of a challenge to do that. But I can see after having done it, I would be in a better position. Next time I'm out at Milngavie or wherever. Yeah.
If you're sharing your values and your hopes and aspirations for an independent Scotland, rather than arguing with somebody about something, you're going to get them on board a lot quicker. And a lot of people will just go, I didn't know that's what independence was about. It's
about planting a wee seed of doubt in somebody's mind. You can't expect to make Damascene conversions, like in the blink of an eye. But just, even just like having a positive contact with somebody, respectful and civil, even if they don't agree with you. But, I think, what you're saying, the idea of listening to what they're trying to say rather than lecturing them, and because often it's not facts and statistics, although facts and statistics, like in the wee book, are really useful to back things up. That's often not really what changes people's minds, is it? It's not. It's more the heart than the head in some cases.
Exactly, and you've just hit the nail on the head there. I mean, yes, the facts in the book are, and they're all sourced, they're online. You can click on the links to online, etc., and look up every single fact, and they can't be argued with. And it does paint a picture of Scotland that can clearly afford to be independent. That's the groundwork, which possibly wasn't done before 2014, to be honest with you. But it's done now. We can see the polls moving in terms of people's belief in the economy, etc., the stats. That's the groundwork done. Now the conversations we have to have are about how we create a better nation with the powers of independence. We can get off the back foot. We can put them on the back foot over Brexit, for sure. But we can get off the back foot and start talking about our dreams. Now, the thing about the wellbeing approach and the thing about the polling we're doing is a lot of it's actually about trying to identify our nations in our compass. What are our values? So we're going to last 2014 we were trying to base the campaign for independence on a lot of stats, a lot of facts, and a lot of answers to complicated questions. This time round, let's base the case for independence on the shared dreams of 1 million people, or millions of people. Because what else would you ever want to start a new nation based upon?
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to argue against that. People can't get really angry with you when you're talking about bringing people out of poverty and also paying pensioners a fair pension, because that was one of the things. And Marlene, you talked about your age group before, and people who are drawing a pension have every right to worry. Pensioner poverty is a big issue. One of the reasons it's a big issue is because we don't pay a fair pension.
Yeah.
And they go, we can't afford the pension. Well, we've got the lowest pension in the OECD, we've got the lowest pension in Europe. And if you look at as a percentage of average earnings, I should add, if you look at other nations, if you were to take the average of the EU and say we will pay that pension, then it more than doubles the pension. And why wouldn't we want to do that? We can find ways to do that. We just have to stop subsidising waste at Westminster, and we need to find a way. Other nations have found a way. Why can't we? Yeah. And people say, but it's not sustainable. It's only not sustainable if you continue along this right-wing, neo-capitalistic, failed economic thinking. If you actually bring in a well-being approach and raise your economy that way, truly raise all boats when the tide comes up, then your economy will work and you can afford it.
Yeah.
To go back to the conference, Gordon, I mean, there probably are people listening in that weren't there. So to tell them a little bit about it, I mean, I know there were huge amounts of yes groups from all over Scotland were represented there. And it stretched from Friday all evening, all day Saturday, more or less, and all day Sunday. And there was a huge amount of sort of range of topics, including the storytelling, the press with Richard Walker, Janie Godley, Stuart Cosgrove, Leslie Riddick, a great discussion with the heads of parties, Lorna Slater, the Greens co-convener, Keith Brown, the deputy leader of the SNP. I'm sure you can tell me ones that I've missed out, but it really was a very all-encompassing conference. And you mentioned feedback. I just wondered what's come out of that, in general. What were the most common sort of reactions from the people who have provided your feedback?
Yeah, we're actually about to send the feedback out to all the attendees today, touchwood. I think we've put a Survey Monkey up afterwards. We've collected that information. So essentially what this was, we decided a few weeks ago, we said, right, I'll take it back to the very beginning. In January, we launched Believe in Scotland, and we launched Believe in Scotland with our first campaign, Scotland the Brief. And that was on January 22nd. And so it wasn't too long before we actually hit lockdown. So our campaign was locked down pretty much straight away, but we've sold 20,000 copies of the book. And we've distributed 250,000 leaflets, those little cards that you were talking about that you give away in your Pinterest Wednesday stands. Yeah. 250,000 of those have gone out there convincing people about the strength of Scotland's economy. And that's no small thing. It's a big contributor to why people are starting to believe. But we've pivoted online very quickly, and we've spent thousands on Facebook adverts, sharing the content there. We did a video an animated video of our leaflet, which had about 250,000 views on Facebook. And we've had about 2.5 million views of our graphics via social media, and some of our blogs have been getting shared 15,000, 20,000 times, these sort of things. And the polling, of course, that's something else in terms of the coverage that's received. But at that event, I said we can get to 55% by summer, and we can get to 60% by January 2021 after Brexit. And everybody said, you made a huge mistake there, Gordon. That's never going to happen. 55%. And still people are saying, you're never going to hit 60%. And I'm going, well, you're saying people told me I couldn't hit 55%, or we couldn't hit 55%. I wish it was just me. But there's a trajectory here that takes us in that direction. And that's what Believe in Scotland was all about. So a couple of weeks ago, we said, well, fine, we're doing this ourselves. We need to get, with 65 yes groups participating in the campaign. But we knew there was 150, 160 yes groups, but we didn't know who they were. We don't know where they are. There are whole towns we don't know where, what the yes group is, etc. No one had actually really got a list of more than about 80, 90 names. So we started pulling that list together, and we had a series of Zoom calls, and the conference was agreed. There was 150 people from yes groups, all leaders of yes groups, agreed to put this conference on. We put it on in 4 weeks, and we had 187 delegates from 130 yes groups. Who signed up to this conference, who signed up to be part of the Believe in Scotland campaign. And over the weekend, you mentioned all those great speakers, and there were many, many more, but actually I thought the greatest speakers were the yes group leaders themselves. We were in breakout rooms, we were learning from them. There were some fantastic ideas coming from the floor. They were typing questions away the whole time that we could put into the live Q&As. And we did a series of polls as well. So we engaged the yes group leaders to decide the way forward. And amongst other things, we had a big poll where we asked about 50 questions, and people did it. They're probably exaggerating for dramatic effect there, about 30 odd questions over the weekend. But we had a big poll that asked things like, we're looking to build a campaign from the grassroots up, not from Believe in Scotland HQ down. So we're actually saying we're not here to take charge. We're here to say, what do you need? What help do you need? What support do you need? And so we asked how much influence the grassroots movement will have over the eventual result of the next referendum. And 98% said a lot, or we just won't win without it. 68% said we just won't win without it. We asked how important are billboards, and 93% thought billboards would be either very important or extremely important. So we're looking at that. So really this is the yes groups directing our campaigns to what methodologies we can use during the health crisis, etc. How important are social media messages or adverts targeted at undecided viewers, 97%. And should we do more polling? How important are the polls that we've been doing, etc.? And that was 96%. So we've got very strong messages from people in terms of, and also, again, 97% thought we should crowdfund to pay for this as well. So that might happen, I guess. And getting people through the ambassador program, getting as many people as possible through the ambassador program with 98% of people thought that was a good idea. So 64% thought it was vital, 35% thought it was important. And those sort of things. So basically, those ideas are guiding us. They're telling us. So the yes groups are now telling us what the campaign from a centre should be. And so that's basically what that conference was all about. But it was just for yes group leaders and committee members. We'll do another one in the not too distant future, and for activists. And who knows? The platform. You guys saw the platform. We could put a conference on with several thousand people attending virtually.
Absolutely,
tens of thousands if one.
And
hundreds of thousands.
Will the sessions be available online soon for people that weren't able to attend to be able to see them?
Some will be and some won't. So basically, some of the content, such as my interview with the party leaders, we're going to make that available. And some of the other content will only be available to those that are on the ambassador course, but all the content will be available to the people who attended.
Oh, good.
So that will be, we're just working out how best to do that. So within the next couple of weeks, people will be able to log back in and look at the videos of breakout groups and these sort of things, as well as all the keynote speeches and interviews and talks. But I would the one with the interview with Keith and Lorna, the interview with Leslie, and the interview with
Richard Walker.
Richard will almost certainly be available. We're going to publish them on the Facebook group that we've got, Believe in Scotland Facebook group, which is
want you to tell us a little bit about that Facebook group, Gordon, because I believe it's been really extraordinarily successful.
I think it has been so far. I mean, it's basically, we launched it 8 weeks ago and it's now got 9,600 members. So it's growing very quickly. And the first few weeks I moderated it myself. And it was a full-time job almost. It was to put on a conference, but we've now got a great team of moderators working on that. And whilst I was doing the conference, although they themselves were participating in the conference, because there a lot of them are involved with the S groups, etc. But they actually just kept everything ticking over. And so we've got a Facebook group, Believe in Scotland group. And 9,600 members, highly moderated. There's no arguments, there's no swearing, there's no childishness, there's no slagging off people or saying, oh, sheeple and all that sort of stuff. Delete, ding, ding, ding. We just kick people out of the group. So it's grown that fast, largely because we're just not going to put up with the internal politicking and arguing and conspiracy theories. And so it's a safe place for people to discuss as adults. And I think that's what the real appeal of that group is. But it's a public group as well. And so, some people don't like the fact that they can't swear. Some people have invented some fantastic swear words that you just can't put in your filters until someone uses them, to get all sorts of ways to get around the moderation. But it's a positive group discussing important things. And also, it's not just discussing things. So we crowdsourced from that group the questions that I asked the political leaders. We crowdsourced from that group the questions I asked Richard Walker. So, and Leslie to a certain extent. So basically the group is helping. It's people talking about how we run a campaign, and we go away and we ask the yes groups, we've got these ideas from this group, and the yes groups go, then it becomes part of the campaign. So it's also got a real purpose and above and beyond just chatting.
Struck at the weekend just by, you were talking about, well, not just you but others were talking about 60% yes by 1st of January when we're actually really out of Brexit's happened. And
end of January. Don't force me to try and deliver.
Oh right, was it end of January? Okay, I thought it was end of the year, but right, okay, give me another.
People will have understood that Brexit has happened. We'll have seen whether it's a hard Brexit or not, and by the end of January it will have sunk in. And I think we could, if we handle everything right and nothing goes wrong between now and then, I think 60% is the target to aim for. We might miss it.
I was just struck by how confident you sound when you're talking about it. Well, you just sounded confident again there just now. So so end of January. I can see what you mean. You need a month for us all to sink in and for us to go, oh God. If nothing else, actually, they let us sink in what's going to happen with this internal market bill. But that's a whole other topic, so let's not go there. So I was just following on from that, the 60%, key vital role played by the whole network of yes groups around the country. I mean, there's nothing like that equivalent on the unionist side, after all. But on the other hand, there's the COVID situation, and how do you think that's going to hold back, or are we just going to have to find new inventive ways to deal with that? I mean, obviously, it's a thing that we talk about a lot in the Pensioners for Indy, although we've all got to be very good at taking part in Zoom meetings, but to be able to get to people who are not yet convinced, maybe curious, but not yet convinced.
Yeah. Well, first of all, COVID is a real problem, and it is only going to get worse. One of the things I also do is I run a risk consultancy, and we have been involved in analysing community transmission, and we created a map of Scotland. You might have seen it, got a double-page spread in the Sun back in March, I think it was. Where we actually predicted where all the hotspots would be for COVID, and we predicted every single one of them precisely. So my, that's my background as an economist, although I didn't do the work myself. Sam in my team did that work. But the thing is that it is going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse. And we can't run an independence campaign of traditional, tactics during this. Also, the First Minister and her government are focused on not just the health element of it, but the economic element of it. Yeah. Their hands are tied. They have to focus on that, and to do anything other than to focus on that would be pretty bad for independence, I think. So, we're not going to, until we've actually got it under control or beaten it. Probably got it under control is a better way of looking at it. Until people have accepted that this is the reality. Yeah. Not the new normal, but the new reality. It's not going to be normal. It will eventually pass. But then we can, so we can run a campaign and do postal votes, etc., or a lot more postal votes for older folks at the Holyrood elections. But we can't run a referendum, and we also don't want to run a referendum during the COVID crisis, because our single largest advantage is the huge amount of people who are higher up that activist ladder on our side than there are on the other side. Yeah. Most no voters are just not that convinced by the union. They're just afraid. Many of them, their hearts say yes and their heads still say no. They haven't actually managed to get hold of the information yet that convinces them. So we can put 80,000 people in a march. We can deliver hundreds of thousands of leaflets. They can too, but they have to pay for it. They have to get it sent to the post, etc. We can knock doors. We can chat people's doors. We can talk to people in street stalls, etc. So all of those advantages are null and void because of COVID, and we need to play to our strength, because it's not over. Just because we're at 55, one poll done by the Cabinet Office said 56. We can't just suddenly think we've got this one and relax. We actually need to push forward, which is why we set the target at 60% and believe in Scotland. And everybody says, oh, you can't hit 60%. Well, my argument is, I ran the business side of the Remain campaign, and my research was used by the official Remain campaign that Scotland was better off inside the EU, etc. And we got 62%. So you're telling me that the Scottish people would find that, can vote 62% to remain inside the European Union, which is reasonably useful to us as a nation, but you can't find 62% for something that would absolutely transform us and make us a better country, and create an economic strategy and get rid of the democratic deficit that means Brexit never happen again. Of course we can hit 62%. We can. It's not necessarily sure we will. But if you aim for 60 and you fail, well, then you end up a lot higher than you are now. I've always thought it's a good idea to aim high and fail upwards.
Yeah, indeed. And there's also the point about, we want to have a very decent majority from the referendum. I mean, you just look at what's happened with the Brexit one. So, 52-48 or something like that. Ongoing kind of dissatisfaction and bickering and all the rest of it, understandably. But, we don't want Scotland to be left in. I mean, actually, I must admit, I would go with 52%, but it isn't ideal, far from ideal. I mean, something more like 60-40. There's no argument then.
Well, yes, and 55-45 didn't kill it for the Union, did it?
No.
And yes, I know there's a completeness to voting for independence that you can't necessarily go back, but there's also this reconciliation and getting together to build a better nation after independence.
Yeah.
And so you're not trying to win by 60%. What you're saying is you need to get that many people on board with the idea that everything's going to be okay. You want to also get to the point where even if they do get 40% of the 45% of the vote in the referendum, you want a huge chunk of that thinking, well, it won't be that much of a problem even if we lose, even if our vote doesn't count.
Yeah.
And so basically, you're thinking about nation building as much as winning by 1%. And if you want to build a better nation, then you want to start by painting a better picture, telling a better story, getting even the people who don't vote for you in the end on board with the general concept that it's not going to be you might prefer the UK, but it's still going to be pretty good, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. It is. And I think that ties in with what you said earlier about, the arguments change or the discussion changes, the discourse changes when you get. I mean, I've thought that the last few months, even thinking, well, this whole raft of polls all showing more than 50. It's a different story that starts to get that needed. And actually, I've noticed that I've noticed that posters that are being made now at Yes Ones, they've just got a different feel to it. There's one that says it's a picture of a big key, and it's a key going into a saltire-shaped space. That's all got light coming through it. It's really good design, and I thought, well, that works now. That really works. That a year or two back, it would have been good, but it wouldn't have had it's a bit like come and join us, isn't it? This is what we can do after Indy, then we can do that.
The messaging has changed by these polls, and I was pretty disappointed with the discussion within the independence community. There's an awful lot of people attacking the SNP for not wanting independence, which, by the way, is ludicrous. You might be able to find somebody who's a very soft yes within the ministerial ranks, but the people making the decisions are as dedicated as you guys, as me, as anybody out there. And anybody who thinks that Nicola Sturgeon doesn't want independence doesn't know her. She thinks the way to independence is the behaviour that she's exhibiting right now, and guess what? It seems to be working. Gradualism does seem to have worked, and this is from somebody who was effectively kicked out of the party in the 90s for being a fundamentalist. I'm no longer a member of any political party, but it does. So I've gone full circle on that, and I wish a whole lot of other people would. But the point is, we've got bloggers out there writing about independence, but only for the Yes movement. And so they're speaking to the bubble, and it just becomes an echo chamber. And they start to believe that we're at 90% independence, and they believe that we can just dissolve the union. And we can't just dissolve the union, because Business for Scotland and Believe in Scotland has one audience in mind, that's the undecided. So we don't get the Yes side whooping and hollering, but that means we also don't get our content shared as often. Which is ironic, because the content that wins votes doesn't get shared as often as the content that winds people up about independence.
Maybe you need to write a blog, Gordon.
Well, we do write a blog. My blog has had 2.5 million unique visitors, which isn't bad for an economics blog, an economics blog on Scotland. But that's over the piece. So people who write their own opinions and shouty opinions get a lot more viewers, or some people do a lot more readers than we do. So, and people don't realize that most of what we do is on Facebook. It's images. It's we put an image up on Facebook and we advertise it to an audience. So we might be advertising an image only to the south of Scotland, only to the Dumfriesshire area. So most people have no idea what we're doing, but we're targeting.
So it's targeted
those areas. And we're spending thousands and thousands of pounds on that. But in the meantime, everyone's going, oh, so-and-so's a hero of the Yes movement, and he's just written a blog slagging off Nicola Sturgeon not wanting independence. And I'm sort of like head and hands, like, oh, for God's sake. So, sorry, to get back to what you're saying about the narrative, back then was a lot of people talking about list parties, and a lot of people talking about gaming the system and how the SNP aren't doing anything, etc., even though the polls are rising and that sort of stuff. And I thought, and Scott Goes Pop did a survey that came out at 52%, and I thought he's just been unlucky. He's got a low number there because it's not 52. I knew it wasn't 52. And so I waited a couple of weeks, watched a couple of things happen and said, right, put a poll in place, and we got 54%. That 54% was really important in changing the narrative, changing the story, because a poll of 1,000 people has a 3% margin of error. So if you're at 53, you might still be 50-50. You can really say it could still be 50-50 if it's an extreme margin of error. But when you're at 54, even at the most extreme, you're still winning. You're guaranteed to be winning. So that was the first time we got a 54 normal times, not as a knee-jerk reaction to Brexit, etc. It caused panic, reportedly caused panic in the Cabinet Office. Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, jet up here, etc. And of course, what did that do? It just made it
convinces a few more people.
It convinced a lot more people that didn't know how. Well, that's the reaction. They're really not going to win. And so basically, our poll, we put the top figure out, and then we put an extra figure out, and another figure, and bit by bit, all the newspapers, including the unionist newspapers, are picking up our narrative. And then I waited a wee bit longer, and I just knew that 55 was gettable at some point. And I delayed my poll 3 times over 3 weeks. The polling company said, right, you ready? And I went, no, wait. And we finally went, and we got 55%. And it was so important to the narrative for the Yes Group to get 55% because we press released it with the phrase, 2014 referendum result has been reversed. Yeah. That's pushing it a little bit, isn't it? I mean, that's a bit cheeky to say that. But the Express, the Mail, and the Daily Record and the Sun carried that very line.
Well, that's the headlines that they like, isn't it? You know, that's exactly what they'll pick up. That was fantastic.
That was the story. And from that point onwards, people who are now going to complete polls now believe that Yes is going to win. 63% of the Scottish population believe that Yes is going to win independence. And I think that's if there's a referendum next year, 72% overall believe that independence is inevitable, right? So basically, most no voters, or not most, but a huge chunk of no voters know the game's up. Yeah. And they're asked that question now, are you considering independence? They have to go, well, most of my friends are going to vote yes. Most of my neighbours, most of my colleagues are going to vote yes. I now need to give this more thought. So changing the narrative was so important at that time, and it cost us thousands of pounds for polling companies, etc. And because we had to use a big English polling company rather than try and do it ourselves or locally, etc. We had to get one that the press would pick up on. Yeah. And so that has worked a lot. It's changed the narrative, and people now believe we're going to become independent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a question here from a listener, Gordon, for you. It's quite a wide-ranging one, but it kind of ties in quite well with what we would be going on to, which is the way ahead, what next, because I'm conscious that you've been very generous with your time, but we are kind of we've been on for nearly an hour now, so we don't want to keep you too long, but it's been it doesn't seem like that. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. So I've got somebody listening in, Com Merrick. Now, Com is a councillor in East Renfrewshire for Giffnock and Thornley Bank. I believe he's also putting himself forward for selection for Holyrood as well. So good luck with that, Com. But he's messaged me to say how much he was enjoying your talk, your interview, and his question is, how do we take the economic fear away from folk who worry about their children's future, especially now when education itself seems under assault?
Yeah, so how do we take the economic fear away? And basically, it just goes back to that tell a better story than Westminster can. Westminster's story is, we're going to be doing trade deals with the Japanese and the Americans and all that sort of stuff. And wait a minute, the trade deal we've just done with the Japanese is far worse than the one the EU's got. And the trade deal with America, we all know it involves the NHS. And we all know you're going to have to take the powers back off the devolved parliaments in order to sell parts of the NHS. And we all know that's going to cause a problem. So their story has fallen apart. They don't have anything. They don't have the EU. vote yes to leave the EU. Well, that's kind of like, that's the biggest turnaround of the entire thing. That's what's driving support to yes, is not just that people want to be in the EU, but they're understanding the democratic deficit. People who voted to leave the EU are understanding that Scotland shouldn't be taken out because we voted to stay. There's an element of that as well amongst Conservatives that are switching, in particular. So all of their arguments have fallen apart. We just need a better argument, and our argument can't be based around GERS, because GERS is the only argument they've got left. So two things. First of all, we need to create a set of accounts for this better Scotland that we want. We need to say, this is the economic approach we intend to take, and this is what it will do to our economy, and this is what it will do to our accounts. And people say, oh, that's a big job. Well, yeah, Business for Scotland is going to do that before the next referendum, right? But I'm also not, I'd rather not do it. I'd rather the Scottish Government did it. And the Scottish Government have told me they're going to do it. Ministers after Minister, Cabinet Sec after Cabinet Sec has told me they're going to do it. And we've now been told, obviously, Derek didn't stick around long enough, unfortunately, to do it. But then we've been told that COVID got in the way. Great. Okay. These things I understand, but it's time to do that. It's time to change the GERS and actually say that it was invented to paint a bad picture of Scotland, and we have never bothered to change it since we've been in government. So we're going to change it to a true picture of Scotland as it is now in the UK, but we're also going to present a true picture of Scotland, or a projection of Scotland run this way. And I think that's the first thing we have to do, or one of the first things we have to do. The other thing is, if we share this vision of a well-being led economy that everyone can buy into, because the point I was making before about the poll we've done is that we took the values of a well-being economy and we asked people, do you agree with this statement? And we put an opposite statement in, a neo-capitalist statement in, and Scotland, by and large, in every question, there was a majority for the well-being, before you remove the undecideds. I think there was maybe one or two that wasn't.
Wow.
But the Conservatives came out top on two of the questions, right? Conservative voters, not Tories, people who voted Conservative in 2019's general election, came out top for some of the values. Everyone buys into these well-being values. So we share that picture that everyone can buy into, that nobody can argue with, and that is a proven, that each individual broken down part of the system that we're looking to put in place has been proven elsewhere. We're just putting it together to paint a better picture, to tell a better story. That will mean that people can see something they can believe in, whereas they didn't have something they could believe in last time. They had problems around currency and those sort of things. And the thing is, if you convince people of the well-being approach, then you go and ask them, so what currency? They go, well, it kind of doesn't matter. Whatever we use, it's going to work, isn't it? So don't argue the minutiae. Paint the big picture, paint the dream that we want to share, and get people on board with it. So that's how we do it.
Yeah.
And key to that is building from the ground up, building from the bottom up, which is why we're saying to the yes groups, get on board with us and tell us what you need, what support you need. Because you can't win a campaign unless you build that campaign from the bottom up. And 2014's Yes Scotland was built from the top down, and it didn't work as well as it should have done. But also, how do you build a better nation? From the ground up, from the people up. So we've got to start a conversation with people. We've got to ask people what their values are, what their dreams are, and we've got to match those to our plans. And they're going to buy into it big time. 60% is achievable if we do everything right. And it's not down to me to do everything right. The SNP government has to do some of this itself when it has the ability to do so after it's got rid of COVID, etc. And it needs to put the Scottish government and the Green Party in their manifestos not only have to say what they're going to do, they need to say that a majority is a mandate for independence referendum. They need to say that, and they need to say it will be that 2021 is when we're aiming for it. But what they also must say is that, and in an independent Scotland, we will do X, Y, Z. 55 to 60%. I think it's no, actually, I've remembered it now. It's 53% of no voting pensioners would consider moving to yes if we do that.
Oh, yeah.
That's just a guess.
Well, that's good.
Maybe I've got a poll. Maybe I've got a poll that says that.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, Gordon, can't thank you enough for coming on. And, actually, I've just looked at the list of things we're going to talk about. There's one that we haven't touched on, but we've managed to cover the rest of it. And really appreciate both the detail that you've talked about, but also you're just very good at painting the big picture, and that sounds like the rest of us have to think a bit more about that. So again, thank you so much for coming. I mean, we haven't talked about the ambassadorship. Well, we touched on it, but I do remember you said that we were
That's
going
cool.
to relaunch it quite soon, and maybe
Yeah.
we'll get you back, or someone else from your team could come in and talk to us about it.
More than happy to. Yeah, anybody who's listening, just have a look on Facebook in particular. There's believinscotland.org is our website. If you go to Facebook, we've got a Believe in Scotland page, and we've got a Believe in Scotland group. That's the one that's about 9,600 members. Check us out, get involved, tell us what you want to see in an independent Scotland, and see if we can adopt some of your ideas.